vets a little bit more. But this guy's a young buck. We have OKC's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, you might, it's not the fact that he's young that you valued him so much, it's the fact he's Canadian, right?
That's not the only reason. Come on now.
No,
No,
of
for
course not. No, but in reality, he's obviously, like
what
I
a
said,
great list for Canadians. Wow, what a
yeah,
good day.
yeah, and even then, like I said before we got into Russell, just a great player already on both ends of the court, both offensively and defensively. Even if it's aside from just things like rebounding, Shea is obviously a good player on the defensive end already, staying with his man, doesn't get burned that often, had over a steal per game.
Yeah.
And yeah, he could play both the point guard and shooting guard position. I don't. Some people might like him more as the point guard. Some people might like him more as the shooting guard. Obviously, has a great ability to get to the bucket though. Like a lot of the other shooting guards maybe don't. But with that being said, does find himself to be a bit less of a volume shooter than some of the guys we see here as well.
Completely. Yeah, he doesn't have the career body of work as some of the other guys that we have around him right now. Even someone like Russell is definitely more consistent 20 to 25 point per game player. But to me, Shea just hasn't been given the opportunity. If you're looking at OKC's team last year, which was really his first breakout year, in his rookie year, he really didn't. He played on the Clippers. He did okay. The Clippers didn't really value him as much as they should have at the time, and they included him in that famous Paul George trade. But that was the best piece of that Paul George trade that OKC could have ever gotten. I think that Shea, at his best, tops out at very close to the level that Paul George is at right now. This is at his best. He's not his best yet. He's still very young. He'll only be 22 this year. With that being said, on that OKC team last year, they were a what, sixth seed, fifth seed. They were a very good team that nobody expected them to be because they had all these veterans around him that were able to lead this team to the playoffs. Um, Shea was able to learn from all these guys. You had Chris Paul as a mentor. What better mentor can you get in this league? You had Danilo Gallinari, your power forward. Steven Adams was there. He's been around all these winners, and it really showed. I think it really rubbed off on him last year, and he was still able to get his points per game up to over 19 points on a team filled with scorers that are beyond his level. I think now in OKC, the only other person who's anywhere close to his level is Al Horford, who's more of a playmaking player to begin with, who's probably going to take more of the point guard roles. No, not like a point forward kind of role on that team, just because of the lack of playmakers that they have right now with Chris Paul leaving. And I know they just picked up George Hill, but it's not the same level. But Shea, I think he just learned so much from all those players, and it's gonna rub off on him on having such a great year. I don't see OKC making the playoffs this year, by any means, because they just don't have the same level of players that they had last year. But I see Shea getting his probably points up to like 22, 23 next year, and him really just having an all-star year. And on top of that, the guy actually plays defense. He's actually a very, very good defensive player. I put him right now actually ahead of a player like D'Angelo Russell on the defensive end. And I think that this upcoming year, he can actually put up a similar statistical level on offense as someone like Russell.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who really knows how to use his body well, in terms of obviously on defense, again, as mentioned, over a steal per game, but also tied for second in blocks for shooting guards with 0.7. And I find that very different than a guy like his Canadian counterpart, Andrew Wiggins, where if you look at them, they are both very lanky. But again, both on offense and defense, I feel like Shea uses his body a lot better. Even when he's getting to the bucket, I feel like he uses his length to his advantage a lot better than Wiggins, and he's not scared to get in, not too scared to get down low, even though he is kind of looks like he would be on the slimmer side. He's not a guy who gets bumped around too easily. He's a guy who hangs in there pretty well. And another thing huge with OKC, I find, with that happened last year was when you hear Chris Paul talk about that team, he always talks about Shea in the most positive light you probably ever heard Chris Paul talk about anyone. Chris Paul is a guy who everyone respects him around the league. Obviously, a guy who's the head of the players' union, but he's a guy who's very petty in his own right. So for him to actually find a liking to a guy where he calls him his brother, apparently they communicate with him every day. And we did see such a big year from, or such a big jump from year 1 to 2 for Shai. Year 2 to 3 definitely, like you said, has a possibility to see him not only be a 22-23 guy, but be like a 22-6-5 guy, where he just all around seems like a great player. And on defense, we both already know what he can do as well.
100%. 100%. I'm actually very surprised that he didn't get more consideration for most improved player last year. I know that Brandon Ingram got it. Brandon Ingram had an amazing year. But Shai came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Just his overall play and the team success and how much of an integral role he was to that team success. It was fantastic. And we were talking about a player that before last year started. He was a borderline Team Canada roster player. Like if all the Team Canada stars are playing, like we've named a lot of Canadian players so far in our rankings. Tristan Thompson, Brandon Clark, recently Dylan Brooks, Andrew Wiggins. Shai just wasn't on the level of those guys. And now not only is he on the level, but he's right up there with Jamal Murray and leading that team to a potential not just an Olympic appearance, but if we have players of this level leading Team Canada, we're talking medaling at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Maybe giving the U.S. a run for their money if all our guys are actually playing it on top of their game, just because our guys would actually be trying.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when you look back to at the 2018 NBA draft, it's one of the best drafts in recent memory. And Shai is a guy who fell to the 11th spot. Normally, when a guy falls to the 11, like you said, takes a few years to develop. Didn't look like he was necessarily a star while he was with the Clippers. And when he gets
he was good. He was still an above average rookie.
Yeah, but when he got traded to OKC, it didn't necessarily seem like he was the key piece. It seemed like the draft picks were, and now it really seems like Shai is obviously that key piece. But again, going back to that draft, I mean, originally it obviously goes Ayton, Bagley, Doncic, Jackson Jr., Young, and then a bunch of guys in between, 6 of them, guys like Colin Sexton, Wendell Carter Jr., who are also very good.
Good
But
players.
yeah, but I feel like if you had the 5th pick in that draft now, you would probably take, or 5th or 6th pick, depending on how you feel about Marvin Bagley, you would honestly probably take Shai at either the 5 or 6 spot right now. And that's just speaking to how talented he is.
What a great draft, though. Like, we're talking about the draft this year being potentially weak and how maybe one player, two players are going to have an above average year and absolutely be productive on their teams. And we're talking there 5 guys that within 2 years are 20 and 10 guys, 20 and 5 guys, shooting the ball from 40%. A lot of them are playing above average defense. Like that was a true rookie movement. And you know what? We can't hit it like that every year, because then there wouldn't be bad players. The great players now would be the bad players.
Yeah, and just before we move on from Shai on that note, I honestly think we'll probably do a video soon just on that 2018 NBA draft, because even looking at the second round, there's multiple starters in it. It's actually ridiculous how good that draft was.
Subscribe and check it out.
Definitely, but we're going to move on from Shai now. We're going to go to the 8th spot. So